All right, the next step is to convert these to vector elements, not just text elements, to be able to work with. And maybe before I do that, yes, before I do that, I'm going to make the most of the text elements that I can. And I'm going to bring the kerning of the 2015 in so it looks a lot like it matches what I have for the MLK walk. So I think that would be nice. That looks pretty good, maybe a little bit more. It's still nicely readable. Then maybe I'll also change the leading just a tiny bit. Try 100. Nope, need more. $120. Okay. So now that I've liked my text treatment of these, the way that you convert them into vectors, and to be really safe, you can make copies of them. So I'll first take this top one here. I select it all, I copy it, and then I'm going to paste it in place. So I have two copies now, and I'm going to turn off the one underneath. Okay, and now that I have it selected, I'm going to right click. With the small selection tool, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say create outlines. And what that does is it converts it from being a font that you cannot change the anchor points and everything to just vector shapes where I can redraw it. I can do almost anything I want. So for instance, if I wanted to, I can make a little serif on this K just by redrawing that outline. But the tools that are a little bit handier is to maybe give it a stroke. So maybe I'll give it a white outline. Maybe gray, a little bit thicker. Maybe not quite so thick. I have all these different options I can play with. And if I make that a white outline, that's going to actually help my design kind of show up. So I'm going to keep it gray for now until I just get the style of it that I want. And I think I probably want it uniform. Just keep it nice and clean. Maybe 3-point. Yeah, that looks good. And now because they're all different vectors, I can select different ones, like those two, and then just use the dropper tool and match the format I used for that. Now that's pretty strong. And then for Walk 2015, as vectors, I can do lots of things. Let's see. But what do I want to do? If I want to play with the anchor points a little bit, Oh, I haven't converted this to a vector yet. So now I'm going to take this group. That's done. I'm going to take this group. You see here. I'm going to copy it. Make it easy. I'll make a new layer. And then I'm going to paste in place. Lock and turn off the others. And then I'm going to use the small selection tool, right click, create outlines, turn it into a vector. And of course that means if I want to, I can turn these into any kind of shape I want. I can modify them, make them a little different, soften them up. And now that they're vectors, I can also select them and match this font treatment that I've already come up with. And I'll just do it across all of them. Hold down Command, select all those vector shapes, and then just make it all match. Okay, now it's all in gray here. But the reason I want it is actually so on a gray background it would show up in white. So I'm going to create a layer just to show you what that might look like. So a new layer, layer 5, I'm going to drag it underneath everything. Or at least underneath my text. And then I'm going to draw a big gray shape. Hold down Alt Option and contain it. And then fill it with a color. Maybe a gray color. Let's see what happens if I move it behind my PNG. There we go. And now that would be what it looks like if it's on a gray shirt, or if you know what kind of context you're going to be putting it in, you can kind of make it match that shirt. So if you know it's going to be on a light blue shirt, see if we can force that to be gray. Something like that. See, I liked that purple. I'll go back to that. All right. But the problem is the gray doesn't look very good there, so I'm going to make the gray work really well. And I want to come up with just a pure black and white option like I did with the image. So I'm going to select all of these. And convert this stroke instead to a white stroke. See how I like how that looks? And that shows up a lot better. I can do the same thing with these. And then maybe I'm done. If I want to make that even more dramatic, for instance, the MLK, I can select it, I can copy it, I can paste in place, and I can reverse it. So that it's white with a black outline. But then I can move that behind. And I can use the large selection tool. This can get a little confusing. But now I can use the large selection tool, hold down Option, and kind of grow it from all sides. And do a little bit of an offset. So that it has even more going on behind it. And because I'm using the large selection tool, I can also just warp it and size it to where I want. There we go. So maybe I just want to extend it out a little bit like that. I'm going to get rid of that black stroke. So that everything matches. Play with different sizing, play with different effects. I like the idea of it just stretching out a little bit like that. And I can try other things behind it, like maybe I just want a white block behind the M and the W to reinforce that. I'll use the shape tool. We do a rounded ellipse right behind those two. Stretch it out a little bit. And I just have to make sure it's behind everything. Then I might decide I want to move these over a little bit. Because they're individual vectors, I can now isolate them easily and move them independently without too much bother. Have them line up with the edge. I can do the same thing with 2015. So just limitless options. And shift it down as a whole. Using the large selection tool, kind of customize the font, stretch it out. Maybe I want to give that white background box a stroke, and maybe I want that stroke to be fairly thick. These are the kind of options we have now that they're all individual. By being individual vectors as well, I can make tiny little adjustments until I'm happy.
1 minute.
Thank you. And the pain of graphic design is that you can just keep working until it's perfect. Which of course just makes your portfolio as strong as it can be. By playing with fonts within Illustrator like this, you'll have a greater appreciation for fonts as well in general, their complexity, what goes into them.